2:17. If God knew that Adam and Eve were going to eat of the tree of good and evil, why did he create the tree?
Why did God create the tree? Is that what you said? If he knew they were going to eat of it, why did he create it? That's a really good question. If he knew they would eat, why did he create it? That is a really good question. Well, Sophie, I'll give you the short answer, and then we'll do a long one. The short, and let's all look. Everybody have Genesis 2:17 there? Let's get there. Because actually, this is, in the visitor line this morning, someone came through the line, and I was meeting them. And I said, where do you normally go to church? And they said, we moved here. And they said the type of church they're from. And this is a very big doctrinal issue, but I'll read it. 2:17 says, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat it you shall surely die. And so why would God, if he knew they would eat of it, why did he create it? Sophie, you're gone. Where did you go? There you are, right there. There are three answers to your questions. And here they are. Basically, the first is the infralapsarian view. The second is the supralapsarian view. And the third is the Doug sub? Where are you? Where I heard yup. Where's Doug? Oh, right there. Sublapsarianism. Sublapsarianism. And this is lapsarianism there too. Basically, the Bible doesn't say. No, it doesn't. That's why there are three views. The Bible does not say. What it says is that God knows all things. Deuteronomy 29:29 says the secret things belong to God. The scriptures also say that God's decrees cannot be broken. So these three views of the fall is, did God, as they were falling, as they were going through the fall, was he navigating and guiding the process, or above like before there was even a fall, and after the fall? It's kind of like, did God know it was going to happen before it even happened and already had the plan, in eternity past? Did he after it happened, or did he while it was happening? Now, that's not really how it goes, but that's how I like to summarize them. But basically this is the answer. And this came with, I don't know if I ever fully, where did she go? The newlywed. There you are, Mia. The idea of evil and why did God allow evil, it's very connected to that. And basically it's this. I will give this simple. God was showing. See, already Satan had fallen. You all know that. Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 says that already Satan had fallen into sin. And the same reason that God allowed Eve to partake of the tree is connected with Mina's question about why did God even allow evil? And I gave that answer briefly, and I will give it briefly again, because just the fact that we have lapsarianism and volumes written on something that the Bible never addresses. You understand that? It doesn't address all things. It only tells us the things that God wants us to know. But I will just take what we know. Satan fell. So number one, Satan fell. Then Satan comes down and begins tempting. There we go. Well, it doesn't like, I don't know. There we go. Then the tempting of Eve started. So chronologically, Satan fell first. Why? See, the real answer to Sophie's question is, why did God even allow Satan to fall? Why does God even allow evil? Why? Because of God's omniscience, his wisdom, actually theologically, omniscience is a nice word, but actually the biblical word is wisdom, that God doesn't discover anything, he never learns anything, he has no additional knowledge. So does God know who's going to be saved? He knew that before anything was created, because before there was time, in eternity past, even though there isn't past, present, and future in eternity, but he has always known everything. I think that's the first thing you have to come to. Either you have if you know anything in theological circles, the whole Greg Boyd, God doesn't know the future view, which is very weak and dangerous and unbiblical, or you have to come to the point that God knew all this was going to happen. And he, before it ever happened, determined the outcome. But why? And here's why I think. And, who am I to say? Calvin wrote his Institutes when he was like 20-some years old or so. Luther, the Reformers have true Augustine, probably one of the biggest minds ever to be on this planet since Christ's mind and Paul's mind. They could not figure this out. And so, as St. Augustine said, he said that these truths are like this. They're like an ocean. And the ocean has this little shallow part where the water's warm and kids sit and splash on the ground. They're splashing. Little children can sit there and enjoy it. But you keep going out in it and you'll drown, like an elephant can drown. So I'll give the short of it. God is perfect and self-existent. And so because God is perfect and self-existent, only God is self-existent and is perfectly good. All those attributes, his goodness, his sufficiency, that he doesn't need anything to keep himself going, his power, and all that. All of us are out here somewhere. And here's Satan right there. There's Lucifer. And God kept him perfect. Nothing is perfect on its own. Nothing. Nothing is self-existently good and able to perpetually continue in perfection. There's lots of big words for that. Satan was out here perfectly doing what God said, but that's because God was keeping him. What does it say in Jude, the last two verses of Jude? Now unto him who is able to keep you from falling. The preservation power, the power God has to keep us is all that keeps us alive. That's what Colossians 1 says, that through Christ all things consist. He's holding everything together. And so what did he do? God just briefly just said, I'm going to demonstrate what happens when I don't hold on. And he just for a moment went like that, and it says, evil was found in Satan. That's what he said. Look at Ezekiel 14. Isaiah 14. I can talk all night, but we have to keep with the scriptures because I want you to see how I think. But Isaiah 14, and it says, Isaiah 14, starting in verse 12, how are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? I'm in Isaiah 14:12. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart. Now, this is what's so interesting. Actually, it appears biblically, if you merge, here's the throne of God right here. It's on this high mountain, and it's a throne. I'm not an artist. My father was an artist, but there's a throne, and, God is, light streaming from him. And it appears that Lucifer was the covering cherub, that he had his wings like this. You kind of see it in Egyptian, they just found Nefertiti's tomb, King Tut's mom, and her tomb was always there. They just didn't notice it. It was behind the wall, and they're all excited about it. But part of the decor of that room are these winged seraph-like creatures. And always the Pharaoh has those, when he's sitting on his throne, those winged cherubs are over him almost like a parasol. And they're like a reflective, when photographers have the flash, they have that parabolic, kind of umbrella thing. That's kind of what Lucifer was reflecting. God's glory was up and it was reflecting back. So that's how Ezekiel says that Lucifer was up here as the covering cherub. And so that's really a neat thing that he was able to do that. And so God, while he was holding him tight, Lucifer reflected back the glory. And so what it appears is that God, and again, that's the infra, supra, sub stuff. I mean, did he plan? Did he do it? How did he do it? When did he do it? But look what happens. You have said in your heart, verse 13, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mountain, on the mount of the congregation on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. And then look at verse 14. This, for me, in all my readings of Scripture, is one of the greatest evidences of inspiration. Look what it says in verse 14. I will be, what does your Bible say? I will be what? Like. You notice what he doesn't say? He doesn't say greater. That shows this is a true account. Because if we were writing it, all of the rebels say, I'm going to have a greater empire. I'm going to beat you. Lucifer knew there's nothing greater than God. God is greater than the sum of everything he has created. And even that is incomprehensible to us, but God is greater because he did not exhaust any power to create everything. He is so limitless, so omnipotent, we call it. So God let him for a moment, without God holding him, see what happened? And he says, I decide that I. And that's why something very interesting here. His name before the fall was Lucifer. When he fell, he began sin. And what caused him to fall is pride. And in the English language, we have a beautiful correspondence there that the center of Lucifer and the center of pride and the center of sin is always I. And you notice that 5 times he says, I will ascend, I will exalt, I will also sit, I will ascend, and I will be like the Most High, and you'll be brought down to the pit, to the lowest parts of the pit. Now, go over to Ezekiel. So it goes Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and look at 28, because he fills in some more of the wonders of what Satan had. And again, it's in verse 12. And by the way, this is an example of what we see with Peter and Jesus. Do you remember in chapter 16 of Matthew that Peter's talking? And what did Jesus say to Peter? Get thee behind me. Yeah, see, Jesus was talking to Peter, but he was looking beyond him. And he could see who was really the instigator of the words, that Peter was saying. And there was a king of Tyre. That's a historic personage, the Phoenicians. And they were on an island off of the coast of modern-day Lebanon. And they were mariners excelsius. And they were fabulously wealthy and very proud and very... And who do you think was prompting them to all that? The one who loves pride. See, that's why I said this morning we have to be very careful in modern contemporary worship, because there is so much personality that's injected by the musicians, and a lot of that is prompted by right here. And by the way, it's not just in contemporary worship, it's in Christianity. There's so many personality-driven ministries where the people, it's hard to decide whether they're following the Lord or that person. And really, it shouldn't be hard. It should be biblically, when the Lord works, like Philip with the Ethiopian eunuch, when he led him to the Lord, he left and the guy kept following the Lord. He went on his way rejoicing. Nowadays, we have this connection to people that is so strong that if a pastor does something wrong, it just destroys the whole congregation because they are following him. Instead of him saying, be followers together of me, like I am of what? Christ. See? So the king of Tyre was actually following Lucifer. But look what it says in verse 12. You were the seal of perfection. That's not the king of Tyre. Now, the prophet is looking beyond the king of Tyre, a historic personage, who to the one behind him that was motivating him, which is Satan. You were full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden. The king of Tyre was not in Eden. The garden of God, and every precious stone was your covering. The sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, sapphire, turquoise, emerald with gold. Right in the middle of verse 13. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. Now there's a variant in the Hebrew language, and it is very possible this implies in some forms that Satan was also the worship leader of heaven. Isn't that interesting? And isn't it interesting how pervasively people are connected to music? Have you ever thought of that? I travel the world. I've been to about 70 or 80 countries. You can hear American music on every country, every continent. And everybody is connected through music. But let's not get off topic. Look at verse 14. You were the anointed cherub. See, he was the covering. The variance of this word also, anointed Mashiach, that anointed, or the covering, the parabolic, the reflective, which I prefer, the covering cherub, because it says the anointed cherub who covers. I will establish you. You are on the holy mountain of God. You walk back and forth in the midst of the fiery stones. Remember, I've told you that. Remember this issue of fire that comes out of, that's what Daniel 7 says, this river of fire. God's throne is on fire. And it appears all the stones that surround the throne of God are on fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created. By the way, what day was that? Well, it was after the first day of creation. Remember, it says that as God was laying the foundations of the earth, the suns, the stars of the morning, the angels were singing, but they were created too. And so it's very possible they were part of that creation. So Lucifer, we don't know how old he is, but it's very possible he was created and all the other angels as a part of creation week. But it says, until iniquity was found in you. And see, he was perfectly kept. But then, and you say, where do you get this God temporarily doing that? Well, because he does it. He did it with Hezekiah. Do you remember that? He let go of Hezekiah to see what was in his heart. And what did Hezekiah do? He showed all of his treasures God had blessed him with to the Babylonians, who came and sacked the city and took it all. And he was proud. You see, God restrains so much in our lives. And he allowed what was in Lucifer to come out. And what comes when God is not holding us, what comes out? Evil is found in us. Till evil was found in you. And then verse 16, by the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence, you sinned. That's allusion back to Tyre. That's what they were into. The Phoenicians were traders. Therefore I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, verse 16, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom, and on I cast you down. And so, back to Sophie's question, lest I belabor it too long. If God knew they would eat, why did he create it? Because he had a plan of redemption, and it wasn't his second plan. It was his original plan, because God does not change, and he does not discover. He does not add. He doesn't make mid-flight adjustments. See, we have a great God, and that you're even sitting here this many minutes listening to this is an evidence even of the presence of God within us, even interested, because we love the truth. It says in 2 Thessalonians that lost people never receive the love of the truth. Now, what I'm glad Sophie didn't ask me is everything else to do with this. So that's all I'm going to say about this, Sophie. Is that enough for you? Thanks. That is so sweet, because I could bore you for a long time. Okay?